a few $100,000 less than the engineer's estimate. And so you've got, I think, some additional money there, although, you know, that's, if there's cost overruns or whatever, we don't want to necessarily count on that. But there's 300,000 or 250 to 300,000. Also, I've talked to the finance director, and not necessarily a popular way to do it, but we've also got the option, we have reserves that we could fund this out of. They have to be paid back in a certain length of time, and we talk about putting money back on the tax rolls for economic development. That would be my suggestion for Cub. And we would have the Cub property if we were to acquire it. We've got, we would use this parking lot, but then we would have the old police station, the Cub building, and the parking lot. I think that could go back onto the tax rolls. And it'd probably make up for the, well, I mean, if you sell that and got that back into private hands, it'd make up for all the properties that you would have to destroy on 3rd Avenue, you know, that you'd have to purchase for the expansion of the library over there.
The funds that we would pull from, is that, those are, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are capital reserves in several different funds, and I've talked to Haley about that, Haley Fish, our finance director, and my suggestion would be to use that. We are making 0.55%, as you heard the other night, on our investment, and so that would be our cheapest way to finance that. These are reserves that we're not necessarily using right now. They are for capital expense of some of our infrastructure. That would be our sewer treatment plant and or wastewater treatment. We've also got street reserves. We've got some park reserves, but the money is there to do interfund loans at a 0.55% interest.
But we also have unencumbered cash flow out of the URD that we could tap some of that.
Some, yeah, there is some, but we would still have to do some of the interfund loans. That is correct.
How much is available?
Pardon me?
How much is available?
In the URD?
No, in the that you could borrow from ourselves.
Oh, we've got, I think, we looked at the storm last year, and it was like 1.5 million. Capital reserve for streets is, and I'm maybe way off here, I could get you some accurate numbers tomorrow, but it's in the 1 million range, and you've got the sewer, actually the sewer combined reserve, you've got 1.5, it's sewer and storm. So I'm going to say $2.5, $3 million.
And if I could ask a quick question, didn't you say that you saved about $250,000 in interest by refinancing that bond that you refinanced as a part of this?
That is correct, but that was just a reduction in the amount of bond sale that we did in December. It's not money that we saved once we sold the bonds. It was, we just had to sell less bonds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks. Councilor Ryder.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, when I first started running for this position last year, I had done a lot of research on the internet, and there's just a dearth of information on URAs and the cost that the cities incur when they take on URA organization like that, structure in their cities. And I've always been very conservative as far as how I handle my money and as far as how I think about how government handles their money. And even though I've always been very pro-library, and if you could go online and check out all the books that I check out through the library, you'd see that's a lot every year. And I've done this since I was probably in grade school. And so I'm not anti-library. But what I am and what I have been struggling with is the economics. This is one thing I've noticed that we haven't really discussed here. If I'd have been on the board, on the council previously, based on the information, the facts that I've done research on, I would have to say that I would vote against the library at this time. Not that I would ever be against the library all the time, but in just this particular time in the economic situation of our country and of our state. And I'm going to give some facts in a little bit. But I want people to know that one of the reasons I accepted the position as liaison to the library was because of my experience and how much I appreciated it and what it's done for me. Just as Tim has mentioned as it did for him. And there was a television program that I watched when I was a kid called I Led Three Lives. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember that, but it was about a gentleman in Boston that owned a business, and he some way got involved in the Communist Party, local party. And the FBI found out, or he found out what the subversiveness of the situation was, and he went to the FBI, and they talked him into becoming a spy, I guess, for all intents and purposes, against this organization that he was now a member of. And so for 4 years, 5 years, he worked for the FBI and was going in and out, a very stressful situation. And I just bring this up in the light of the fact that I am on the library board, and no one ever asked me what my feelings were, what my thoughts were about the library, whether I would have voted for or against. So I'm really kind of coming out here tonight and revealing my position. Even though I support our public library that we have here in town right now, I went to some of the 2 tours of different libraries, one up in Camas and one down in Lebanon, and very impressed with what they were able to build. Have to remember that these 2 libraries were built during a very positive economic time in our country. And we now are in a situation here in Oregon and federally that we are in dire straits economically. We are talking here about taking on more debt, adding more debt to our city, putting that not only on our backs, but on the backs of our children, because as they grow up and they get jobs and they live here, they're going to have to pay taxes. And they're going to have to pay that indebtedness off. And we have problems right here in Canby. We are facing budget crisis. Yes, we have maybe $3 million in
Capital reserve.
capital reserves. And, but we have to deal with the problem of PERS. We have to deal with the problem of benefits, health benefits to our public employees, as well as other cities are struggling with the same issue. And we can't hide our heads in the sand and ignore those, because the rate at which our property tax and our personal income is growing. And this was brought out in a graph by our financial consultant here to the city, sent that graph to each one of us, and it shows the disparity between what the growth of PERS and health benefits are compared to the income from tax revenues from property taxes and personal income. And one's at 400% growth, averaging growth, where these others are down here around 200%. How are we going to make up the difference between these expenditures, demands, and the revenue that's supposed to come in, when we are limited by state law to no more than 3% a year revenue increase over the previous tax year. How can we do that? And talk about, at this time, building a 8,000 or total 10,000 or $10 million library. We have 16 billion unfunded liability in state PERS that funds all of our state employees and all of our schools, all our firemen. How can we justify at this time when we have an unemployment rate not 7.9 that our federal government is telling us? Because the reason they're telling us that is because they've eliminated the 12 million people that since 2008 have given up looking for work. They cannot find work, or if they can, it's only part-time. And they're trying to raise their families. They're trying to take care of their financial needs, and they can't find full-time jobs. And so we have in our own federal government, we have at least $60 trillion of liability. Our federal government does $60 trillion of liability for Social Security, for Medicare, for all the government pensions. We are almost, we're broke. We just averted a physical cliff by kicking the can down the road. Kick the can down the road that hopefully we're going to be able to correct this without doing anything. We have...
Council Ryder?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to bring you back. I know that,
Okay, well, what the point I'm getting to...
excuse me.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I understand this is a very testy issue. We are doing our best. We want to vet this as much as possible. Okay? I have yellow cards. Everyone will get an opportunity that wants to speak. Please allow us to have our dialogue. Okay? I appreciate Councilor Ryder's passion and his vigor for the topic at hand. I'm sorry that we are frustrating you as we state our opinions, but I would rather that you guys know where we're at so that we leave here without any other further complications, name-calling, who's for it, who's against it, whatnot. Okay? This is not easy for us up here to have these conversations. Okay? It's not easy in front of an empty room to have these conversations sometimes, because these do get reported in the paper. Right, Ray? Okay. So I please ask you to respect our dialogue as we work through these things. I respectfully ask us up here to let's keep it to the meat at hand, please.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, and my point is that I believe that we are in really perilous times economically. And that's why I would put off the library at this time until our economy comes back, until we have some positive proof that our economy, our employment is coming back, and that we can have the funding that is needed to build a new library, which I'd love to see. And that's my point.
Okay. Any further discussion on this, on the motion made at hand? Okay, I'll... Question?
Just one clarification that was mentioned. The Councilor Ryder said we'll be taking on more debt. We already have the debt. We sold the debt. We sold it for 2.68%.
2.86.
2.86% interest rate. The money's in the bank to build the building and the new city council chambers that would have amplification system and city administration buildings. And with the proposal that I think can be negotiated with Cambria Utility, we would actually be putting property on the tax rolls instead of taking them off the tax rolls if you go to 3rd Avenue or anyplace else, because there isn't any government-owned property that we could locate the library on. The city has been accumulating the land on this block for longer than I've lived in this town. So these properties have been off the tax rolls for a long time. It's not like we're doing something new. And I think with the idea of acquiring the Cambia utility property and redeveloping it, because that's what urban renewal districts do, is redevelop, and within a few years get that on the tax rolls, I think that is a tremendous asset for the community. And I don't think, and based on the numbers that we ran when we looked at the second story for administration before, we were looking at $14 to $15 million total cost. We've got it down to the $10 million area. You'll never get it cheaper, ever. And especially if you have to go out and acquire property on the market or go through a condemnation process, which this council, or prior councils, basically said we wouldn't do condemnations to acquire property for city services. So I think you can kiss it goodbye.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to call for the question here, Kim. Can I do that?
You going to take
I
input
am.
first?
Input on?
From the public?
Not at this time. I would rather that we vet all the other options if there are, unless we can table I'm not sure, help me with protocol here, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of, we have a motion, we have potentially multiple motions this evening. I mean, do we take them one at a time? Since we have a second on that, we have to have
Well,
a vote.
Mr. Mayor?
question?
Oh.
Question actually to Kim.
Yes.
Is it proper protocol then if any of the yellow cards actually speak to Counselor Ayers' motion that they speak now? Or
That's up to
if it's specifically to this motion rather than?
you're not required
I don't know.
to ask, to get public comment before you vote. This isn't a public hearing, so that's.
Okay, then it's up to you, Mayor.
So I'm
Go ahead.
flexible.
Mr. Mayor, could I add just a couple more comments?
Sure.
I just think that with the facade improvements and some of the momentum that's really starting to take place and take hold in downtown, I think we're not quite yet at what I would refer to as critical mass in terms of attracting people to the downtown where they can spend the day down here. They can really spend time. And so I think while the new library project might not be the perfect one, I think that it's a well-thought-out, well-defined plan. I think that it will add considerable momentum, and I think waiting on this project several years down the road, I think will become cost prohibitive because I firmly believe that interest rates are going to go up not only a little bit, but substantially. And when they do this project, type of financing will just be too expensive to consider. So those are just my last thoughts.
Thank you. Okay, so what we will do, since we have a motion at hand, I will take comment on this motion going forward. So what I'd like is if we're going to go row by row. So Ray, anybody in your row want to make a comment about this motion that's been put forward right now?
If you have a yellow card.
Counselor Patton, please step forward to the microphone.
Former Counselor
Sorry,
Patton.
former counselor.
We have a vacant chair up here, Jason.
Only I was sitting up there, trust me. So, my name is Jason Patton. I live at 1040 North Birch Street here in Canby, and I was on the city council that decided to use some of the funds from urban renewal to fund this as well as other projects in the city as an indirect way to spur growth in the downtown core. In my opinion, the plan that is before you is actually better than the one that I voted on, and I wish it had have actually been on the table when I voted on it, because the fact that you're able to realize some big improvements in building the library on property that the city already owns, not taking anything off of the tax rolls, such as the acquisition of the Oliver Building, updating the current city hall into a city council chamber, which will give you adequate facilities to hold meetings such as this, and also combine all of the city offices under one roof because right now you have them spread over 3 different buildings. One of them is a house that could probably fit in my garage, which I feel is pretty sad and looks pretty ridiculous on our city. When businesses come to see how our city is operating, I think that is kind of a travesty. And by consolidating all of that into the old library facility, you would be updating all of those buildings and realizing some cost savings there, as well as with the consolidation, better productivity with city staff, shared facilities and shared resources. So I dare say you would actually be saving money rather than spending more than what you currently are, what you already are. I know when I was on the council, we were bombarded with a number of charts and graphs to show the potential that could be used for not only this library, but the police facility, a transit center, a bridge connecting the roads over by the new police facility, and there was a fair amount of borrowing power there, which even in conservative numbers would still not put us over our heads. I understand the precursors on the state and federal level, but I dare say that the reason Canby has a very good borrowing power and such a good credit rating is because we are a city that has been fiscally responsible for many years. And I dare say that the councils before you have not taken spending money lightly. As sitting on a number of budget committees, I can say that for a fact. We were all very, very conservative and very, very careful of what we would spend. I know that if you kill this project tonight, it will set back wheels that have been put in motion by previous councils to do some really great work. I understand that we all as councilors wanted to make our mark or wish to make our mark, and I think making a mark by relocating and re-diverting this project after it is so far down the road is not the way to do it. I also understood that there was some questions about spending these funds on things that would not generate revenue for the city. And something was mentioned about the facade improvement project. Another project that was funded some time ago, back in 2006, which I want to bring your attention to, was when I was actually on the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, the Canby Fire Station the Canby Fire District came to us and requested $380,000 to expand their office and to build a pole building for storage. And while it was not directly related to the Urban Renewal District, the Urban Renewal folks and the City Council folks at the time felt that that was a good use of the money. So this money, Urban Renewal money, has been spent on projects that do not directly impact the Urban Renewal District. And in spending that money and developing the infrastructure, you will essentially bring those businesses in. That is the purpose of the fund. So to essentially throw hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars away because of some point or whatever the precursor for this is, I think is a travesty. And as one of the people that is your constituent, and many of the people behind me here who will be talking to you very shortly, these are the people that have put you where you are today. These are the voices of the community that you represent. And these are the voices of the community that I represented when I was on council. I dare say, by a show of hands, how many people are here in favor of the library? That's a pretty good number. So, as you make your final decision on this, I wish that you would take that into consideration. As a past counselor, I know that it is difficult, but this decision has been made 3 times already, 2 or 3 times already, and it has passed each time. So what the point of killing it now is really beyond me, and I think I echo the sentiment of my fellow citizens behind me when I say that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor, or former Counselor Patton. I appreciate you being here. I was remiss. If I don't institute the egg timer, we will be here till midnight.
Did I go over 3 minutes? I'm sorry.
You did, but that's...
I'm sorry.
My president of the council here reminded me of the egg timer, so he is the official timekeeper. Anybody else there in the row that has anything different to add to those statements? Anyone?
Are you keeping track of the yellow cards?
Yes and no.
My name is Kathy Shin. We first moved to Canby in 1978. Some of you on the council that want to end this project, I think are terribly disrespectful to scores of people in this community who've been working hard, donating time, skills, professional expertise, raising funds, giving input to the architects to give us a 21st century library. It's also disrespectful to city staff who have put in many hours on this project to carry out the vote that was taken, the last vote in August. That's nearly 9 months ago, and this has been going on and on and on, and people keep asking me, why are we still talking about this? And I haven't heard anything tonight that tells me that this is a bad choice to go forward with this project. I feel like there's an underlying agenda here. A lot of people see that. I think that's by the actions that we're seeing and the things we're hearing. Do the ethical thing and get on board with this project or step out of the way so we can complete it as voted on last August. Your actions are an embarrassment. They reinforce negative impressions about our city. A number of people doing fundraising have told you that to start this fundraising effort, which they did in good faith, and then to change this project and back out, will impact future funding opportunities for this city. There are repercussions to a negative vote on this project. I don't believe for a minute, and there's others that feel the same way, that you want to build a library in a new location, given the uncertain costs, the waste of $350,000 and more. How is that good oversight of public funds? Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, give me 1 sec, Tracy. Thank you. I'm going to go down that side of the room and then come back up, okay? Or we'll zigzag. Anybody else there in the first row there with you? No? Second row there?
Members of the City Council, my name is Myron Pito. I live in Canby along with my wife and our 3 young kids who are or will be attending public schools. I had a list of comments here that I wanted to speak on. And I'm not sure that I actually want to continue doing that, only because I feel almost necessary to respond to some of the things that I've heard. Councilman Ryder, if I understand right, the money has pretty much already been spent. If we don't do anything, we're out $3 million. So I guess I can sympathize with your rant about spending all kinds of money, but if you vote to not do it, you're already wasting all kinds of money. In my opinion, that lacks, there's no logic to that.
Just a minute, sir.
Councilor
I
Ryder.
don't want this
Councilor Ryder.
getting into personalities. This ranting,
sir,
I gave my viewpoint.
I know, and I will address that, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
In other meetings, I've heard people compare the library to buying a Cadillac or a new flat-screen TV. And I think the comparison between city finances and private finances is actually spot on. But I personally think you should take the analogy a step further. And I would compare it to paying for your kids' college education. Now, how many of you would say to your son or daughter who's a senior in high school, I'm sorry, conditions are bad, I just can't warrant, we can't warrant spending that money for your college education. We can't take the risk that the money will be paid back or that they will end up getting something out of it. Can you please tell me what sort of economic benefit we will get from paying for your college education? My parents took that risk on me. I intend to take that risk with our kids, and I would assume you guys will do the same thing with your kids. And the question I ask is this new library more like a flat-screen TV or a Cadillac, or is it more like a college education? The foundation of a democracy is an educated, well-informed populace. Libraries provide that. They're a renewable resource. They improve literacy. These services are not frivolous. I argue that they're much closer to a college education and investment in our future rather than short-term spending.
Sir, you got 30 seconds to wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
The ability to learn new skills and adapt to changes will define who succeeds and who fails in our economy these days. We're moving to a knowledge-based economy, not one based on services or manufacturing. The rest of the world is moving forward at breakneck speed and is not going to wait while the city council dithers over what to do with money that's already been spent on a library. Please accept what's been voted on twice, saying yes to the library and yes to the future of Canby.
Thank you. So, again, let me reiterate, please. This is not a name-calling session, okay? Mr. Ryder's opinions were just that. They're his opinions. It's not a rant, it's not a rave, it's not a temper tantrum, okay? Please refrain future from those personal kinds of comments. It does not help the conversation. Dustin, your row, sir. Anybody, you have a card here, sir? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, sorry about that.
Good evening. I'm Craig Shin, actually married to Kathy Shin, and we've raised our family here, served on many boards and commissions, many service roles over our tenure in town. I want to tell you three things. One, that I support urban renewal districts and the Urban Renewal Agency. I want you to invest in Canby's future, and I want you to continue the pathway of the Canby Library project as it was approved last year. Urban renewal districts, there are 90,000 governments in the United States, 90,000 of them. 3/4 of them are special districts and school districts, all quasi-independent governments, all with their own fiduciary basis. And so the eyeball on which to look at whether we're doing good or ill is to look at the Urban Renewal District, that agency, in terms of its financial well-being. And we've done that. This is a district that's been created to invest in Canby's future. It allows us to make narrow and focused decisions. Library is on that list. We've done that work. We've made that decision. I want you to invest in Canby's future. I've been a part to a number of these contested decisions, and I've been on the losing vote side a number of times. I remember being the leading advocate for what is now the Adult Center, and my argument was that we should have a multi-purpose, multi-generational community center, and I lost. And what we did is we did what Cambyites do. We closed ranks, we got behind the decision, and we moved the project forward. I actually made votes as a member of county boards to support funding for that project after that decision was made. I would encourage you and would expect no less from you. Approving this project was something that was hotly contested. The council that preceded you made a vote on, after 3 years or more of development, significant debate and deliberation. And that decision is a decision that was made and that has been invested in. I would echo the comment that rescinding that vote, redirecting that vote, that position, or blocking the continuation of that project would violate a kind of trust, hemorrhage a sense of continuity and governance, and crush the spirit of the people that have been engaged in moving the project forward on the basis of the good faith vote last year. I'd like to encourage you to support Councillor Ayer's position for the reasons that he argued, and also the position that Councillor Coleman has made on the same basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in that row before I move on? No? Okay. Dustin Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I'll be quick, filling those butterflies too. So you're in good company. So I'm a Canby High School alumni, graduated class 2001. All four of my daughters have been born while living in Canby. We bought our first home in Canby. My first job right out of high school was at Custer's Thriftway. I worked there for a number of years. I also worked at the Canby Starbucks with Mr. Mayor here. My wife and I, we love this community. It's the only place that we as a married couple have ever called home together. It's where we're raising our kids, and so we care deeply about the future of it. We are sad to see the new direction that the council is taking with the library decision. We were excited when we had heard that in August that it had passed, and we understood that not everybody was for it, but we were glad that our elected officials had decided to go ahead and do that. We're big users of the library. We homeschool our daughters, and so we come down to the library, we check out books. But to be perfectly honest, for the last year, we frequented the Wilsonville Library a lot more. Once a week, my wife makes a dedicated trip out to Wilsonville to their story time that they have there. The children's area is beautiful. It's not even about state-of-the-art. It's designed for kids. Bookshelves are the height for kids. It's not split between two sections with an exit right in the middle like the way our library is. It's a nice place. It was well thought out. And those may seem like small things, I think, to people that don't currently have really young children, but it's important enough that my wife makes a special trip out there once a week, packs 4 kids up, including a 2-month-old baby, and makes that drive, spends the gas money. And you can guess which businesses we are frequenting then on those days. It's not Cuthbert's Thriftway, it's Lamb's Thriftway. It's not Parsons, it's getting a smoothie over at Wendy's. That's where we are spending our money on those Thursday afternoons. I feel like a library makes great economic sense. As we look, as our growing family is outgrowing our current home, we look at buying a new home. Canby is a place that we love, but it has stiff competition in this area. And if you look at some of the census data from 2000, 2010, areas like Wilsonville and even Molalla have seen their biggest growth in the 18 to 64-year-old range, with children following close behind, 5 to 17. Canby's biggest area of growth, 55% population growth in those 65 and over. And I love our retired. I think that's a great asset that we have as a community. But we had a 14% growth in the amount of kids in this community. That's kind of sad. I think we are on our way to becoming a community that is not friendly for young families. Councilman Ryder, you talked about the taxes that our kids will have to pay for. I'm afraid that our kids may not be here. My kids may not be here, at least in the future, to even pay those taxes, because this community seems increasingly unwilling to invest in children and young families.
I have to give you the time there, Dustin.
Oh, is it time? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. through you, or Mr. Rife?
I'd just like to quickly add, as a retired senior citizen, I appreciate being considered an asset.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't want to be here tonight. 3 preliminary things. I don't want to be here because I don't like conflict among members. Number 2, I've been sitting in this room since 1975, and sometimes I think the only thing that's changed is 9 more members of mayors with their pictures on the wall. Number 3 is I would ask that the council consider the tens of thousands of people over the years that have gone into this few square feet of this room and try to make Canby what Canby can be. I don't see it. This is my opinion. I am not representing anybody here tonight. I think we have a vision for the community. It wanted a small but vibrant community. It didn't want to think small. It wanted to think big. It wanted to get out of the box. I think we're about ready to blow a wonderful opportunity. By analogy, let me tell you of a council several years ago that I was involved with. Milgard Windows wanted to come to this community. They were green. They had hundreds of jobs. They wanted to come. They wanted the schools. They came here. But they couldn't get the council and the mayor off wall, so they said, "To heck with you," and they moved away. And you're nodding, you know that. If you have a history of the town, you know that. And what happened is that put us behind for several years, and I don't even think we've recovered yet. We might be here, but we'd be here today. I think you're making a mistake. We've heard of cost. I don't know, but I'm going to tell you, it sounds to me like we're going to spend money to figure out how we're going to spend money in the future. I want to tell you that condemnation and specialist attorneys are very expensive. You think you have costs now, you're going to really have them. I don't think the project will go. I'm so disappointed. On taxes, look at the other side of taxes. I can tell you that when businesses come here, they come here for progressive communities. They don't come here if things are falling down. They want to see things moving. Businesses want to come here, people want to move here for advancement, not hold tight. I expect that there will be a fall of the credit rating. I expect there'll be a fall of the reputation in the community. But let me say one thing that I think here that I just believe with all my heart. I've been a member of the school board, or was a member for many years, served as chairman of the school board, been on the Canby Center. I've been the founding member and present member of the Canby Education Foundation. And you're hurting kids. You're hurting kids, and that hurts me. A summation, I'd just like to say a few words. A majority of you are going to make a decision for this community that will long be remembered. I remember a little story when I was a kid that my parents taught me, and I can't remember everything it was called, but it was an engine that couldn't do it. And we had this small little train engine, and people were saying, "We can't do it, we can't do it." And then all of a sudden it was going up the hill, and we said, "We can do it, we can do it, we can do it. I think we can do it, we can do it, we can do it." Guys, the train is going, and I'm asking you, I'm pleading with you, do not derail the train. Don't be the train wreck in Canby, Oregon. That's all I got to say.
We'll go to the back corner there, Mr. Foster.
Just for those that don't know, I'm Bill Foster, and I have spoke before the group before under the commission. We have heard many things tonight, and both pro and con. And one of the big things is that the community wants this. The community wants this. We hear that constantly. And we hear not a lot on the negative side of it because of one reason or another. But you guys did hear it from the negative side. The previous commission and council voted in a project, and we've had an election since then and changed the commission and the council. We did that for a very good reason. And in fact, that should tell you how the whole community feels, because you were voted in by a majority of the people. And from that standpoint, I'll leave it at that. Do what we've asked, please, as the new council. Thank you.
Sir? Thank you for the applause for that. I know that that's sometimes in a room like this where it's a majority like we have, it's tough to come up and state those opinions. So, Ms. Doolittle, nothing? Thank you. Sir, anything at this time? Would you like to come up?
I did turn the yellow card.
Sure, you can take that opportunity right now, sir.
My name is John Smith. I live here in Canby. I've lived here in Canby for almost 35 years. I've worked in libraries for over 25 years. I worked at Wilsonville Library for 25 years. I can see what the location of a library does. Before the library in Wilsonville was built, it sat all by itself. It was then that across the street came in businesses. Houses grew up so much that Wilsonville was wide that they set aside a lot of areas for parks. Excuse my butterflies. Set a lot of places for parks. And parks are a big draw. And I think it's very important where the library is located. I believe that the improvement of First Avenue here in town was done so that Canby would become a magnet rather than a distraction. We get a lot of people driving right by and not paying attention. By locating the library on the side, out of the way, it will no longer be a magnet. We'll lose development, futures in the kids. Do we want rich idiots, or do we want smart people who are struggling to get by? That seems to be the question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Drott.
John Drott, 23951 South Platte Road, and I'm aware of the 3 minutes, and I will honor it.
Thank you, sir.
You know, I've been deeply involved in this process, and I know that moving it to Third Avenue is going to cost the city more money, and it's going to have less library. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Now, but we can calculate the financial costs of these various movements, but what we can't calculate is the human cost. And it reminds me of one of my favorite filmmakers, Frank Capra. You know, he did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and one of my favorites, It's a Wonderful Life. And if you remember the story of It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, you know, he lived in the small town, Bedford Falls. It's a lot like Canby, where people will come together and help people who are in need. And he had dreams of his own, but he felt obligated to continue on with his father's home and loan business that invested in the people of Bedford Falls and helped them achieve the American dream. And the nemesis in that story was Henry Potter, who was this landlord who was just nasty and wanted to rule over the whole town. And of course, George Bailey and Potter, they went back and forth. And when it finally appeared that Mr. Potter was going to prevail and that George Bailey was ruined, he looked up and he said, you know, I wish I'd never been born. And an angel, Clarence, came down and showed him what life would have been like if he had never been born. And Bedford Falls had become Potterville, and it was just a mean, nasty place. And in fact, just about the only person left who was decent was his sweetheart, Mary, who, because he wasn't around, became a spinster librarian, which is kind of ironic. And can I just say that I know the people who oppose this, they don't want Canby to become Potterville, and I know that Canby won't become Potterville if you don't build this library. I know there isn't any nasty Henry Potters running around town. That's not my point. My point is, we can't expect an angel to come down and show us what would have happened if we had built that library in 2013. We won't know the lives that could have been affected, but we canceled it. We would know. Now, Canby actually has a George Bailey. His name is Walt Daniels, and I saw him back there, and now he's probably blushing. I don't know if he agrees with that assessment, but I think it fits. And one of the major decisions Walt made towards the end of his service on this very council was in support of this project. Now, Canby needs more George Baileys, and you've put yourself in a position to be George Baileys of Canby. And I think what most of these people here are asking you to do is become George Baileys of Canby, respect the work of the George Baileys like Walt Daniels did in the past, and allow this project to continue without any further delay and without any further obstacles put before it. I know each of you have the spirit of George Bailey in you, and it's time you let it shine.
Thank you, sir. Miss Mary Walsh.
I lived in West Lynn, raised my children there before I moved to Canby. I was chair of the West Lynn Library Board when we built the library, unbelievably, 25 years ago. If my city council had stopped the progression we had made, I just cannot even imagine. It's just beyond me. I'm confused and puzzled, and I really don't understand. I attended some of the design meetings, and I didn't hear any negatives. The library staff and many of us have spent lots of hours. We have $500,000 in grant applications out. $500,000. This needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. And she hates me saying this, but I can't help it. I've known lots of librarians in my life. We have an amazing staff. But we will lose Penny. I guarantee it. We will lose Penny, and fast. Other libraries, West Lynn, for one, has approached her. They've lost their librarian, they're looking for a new one, and they have asked her to apply. Please, let's go forward. Make this a better place. I love Canby. We have good schools. My daughter teaches at the high school. We have great teachers, people that care. This is a wonderful place to live. I've never been sorry that I moved here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Tom, before you stand up, I was hoping I'd catch you. I would agree with your comments about Penny. I think Penny has done a wonderful job with programming. She's done a wonderful job with creating activity around the library, as has the staff. I have no doubt about that, and I would hate to see her go somewhere else, you know? So, Tom, I'm actually going to start back up here at the front, if you don't mind, sir. So, Tracy, please.
I'm Tracy Height. I have given many hours to the library as a volunteer. I've been a successful storytime presenter, volunteer that is, for 3 years, and now I'm on the Friends of the Library Board. I testified twice last summer before the vote, your vote, to approve the urban renewal funds for the library. Our current library is small and unattractive. It just doesn't feel good to be there. The children's library especially, as Dustin pointed out, it's a disconnected space. It doesn't invite families to come and stay and hang out like Wilsonville and West Lynn libraries. A 21st century library, a building that's designed to be a library, would. I've seen the plans for the new library. I attended 2 of the community planning meetings, and they're fantastic. The need for a new library is even greater now than it was last summer, I would say, when you voted twice for the new library. I co-hosted a pajama time with Peggy, the children's librarian, in February, and that brought in at least 50 people, and they were once again shoved to that awkward space in the back of the children's library. We've still had a blast, and we make do with this space because we have to, but just think of the possibilities when we have our separate story time space for children's programming. That goes for adult programming too, and a city council chamber that would accommodate all of us here, for that matter. Speaking of programming, the library has been booming the past 3 years since Penny Hummel became director. And let me say a word about Penny. She's the best thing that could have happened to us library lovers. She's a strong, talented, intelligent leader, and she's responsible for this increased programming, circulation, library services, and this new library vision. We're lucky to have her, the president-elect of the Oregon Library Association. And I agree with Mary Walsh, if we take away our new library, she will go with it, and I feel like it's a slap in the face. I can't think of a better use for these urban renewal funds. The library will energize our downtown area, I believe, serve our intellectual and social needs in the age of knowledge, and renew our faith in our elected city officials. If you renege on this vote and snatch away our library for no just cause, the people of this town are going to feel frustrated and betrayed. It will be an embarrassment, and it's going to be ugly, I think. Please do what is ethical and fulfill your responsibility to this city and to your office as elected officials representing us here tonight, and get on board with this new library.
Thank you, Tracy.
Actually, and I have a letter from Linda Warwick too, and they're both pretty brief, so.
Okay.
I'm Teresa Enderle. I live on 2210 North Country Club Drive. I'm a neighbor of Rich and Joyce. I was present at the April 3rd City Council meeting when the mayor read a proclamation opening, and actually this week is National Library Week. So I encourage everybody to visit the library and see the benefits that we have there. But some of the highlights of that proclamation I wanted to call out. Libraries are the heart of their communities, campuses, and schools. Librarians work to meet the changing needs of their communities, including providing resources for everyone and bringing services outside of library walls. And libraries continuously grow and evolve in how they provide for the needs of every member of their communities. We all want to keep our town small and a real community, but that doesn't mean we want to live in the past. We want the good things about Canby to be even better. That's why I support energizing our downtown and immediately building our new library as its cultural and community center as approved by a vote of the City Council. The new library has support that not only includes that past version of the council, but the financial support of Clackamas County, the support of many independent foundations that have already pledged large donations for its completion, and the support of many residents who attended multiple meetings on the design of the new library. This also includes the volunteers who are actively fundraising, making time commitments, and personal monetary contributions to this effort. There are those that protest, the same ones asking for a vote of the people when there is no vote of the people, those who don't want new library taxes when there are no new library taxes, and those who misquote representatives and supporters of the library in words that fit their own social agenda. And then there are the rest of us, the majority, informed, passionate, progressive. We are the citizens and voters of this community. Each and every one of you represents us, and we do expect the library to be completed as planned. It'll be a great day for our city, and we'll celebrate its opening in full partnership and recognition of the City Council with vision. Thank you. And then I also have from Linda Warwick. She's the president of the Friends of the Library Board. To Canby City Council, I'm out of town, so I'm asking a friend to read this message into the record. My husband and I moved to Canby fairly recently. We were looking for a city that was small enough to feel like home, yet progressive enough to provide the services the community needs. It was clear to me